Hey everyone, you ever get that sinking feeling? You know, when someone just hits you with a big fat no?
Rejection. It's definitely something we all experience at some point.
It really is. It's like a
Yeah.
universal language, you know? Like, no
Mm.
matter who you are, where you're from, rejection just stings. But what if I told you we could actually, hack that feeling?
Yeah.
What if we could actually turn those rejections into something positive?
Now, that's an intriguing idea, taking something we normally view as negative and turning it into a force for good. That's a real challenge. It makes you rethink how you see those setbacks and maybe even see some new doors opening up.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We found this awesome YouTube podcast script called, get this, Why Failure is a Scam. How to Turn Rejection into Your Superpower. I mean, the title alone,
It's definitely a bold statement. Makes you wonder if they can actually back it up.
for sure. That's our mission today. Unpack this whole idea of rejection as a superpower. We're going to look at the strategies they lay out in the script and see if we can figure out how to use those rejections to our advantage.
One of the things that really stood out to me in this script was this idea that we often mislabel things, you know? We call something a failure when it's really just feedback in disguise.
Yeah. They had this really cool analogy about a baby learning to walk. The baby stumbles and falls a million times, but we don't look at those as failures, do we?
Nope, not at all. We see them as part of the process, right?
Yeah.
Like each little stumble is a step closer to actually walking. It's all about learning and adapting.
Exactly. And the script argues that we should apply that same logic to our own lives. So instead of freaking out about a no, maybe the question should be, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I tweak my approach?
Exactly. It all ties into this idea of having a growth mindset. It's about seeing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow instead of threats to your ego.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of seeing rejection as like a personal attack, we can view it as information, as data. That's telling us maybe to try a different approach.
Right on. And to really drive this point home, the script dives into some pretty compelling stories about famous failures, people who totally flopped at first but ended up achieving huge success.
Oh yeah, those stories are always so inspiring. Like Thomas Edison, right? I remember reading somewhere that he did over 1,000 experiments before he finally figured out the light bulb. Can you imagine giving up after 999 tries?
Talk about perseverance. It blows my mind. And then there's J.K. Rowling. She got rejected by like a ton of publishers before someone finally took a chance on Harry Potter.
Oh my gosh, a world without Harry Potter. That's a scary thought. But it's not just fiction, right? I mean, even Steve Jobs, the guy who basically created Apple, got fired from his own company.
Talk about a major setback. But that failure, if you can even call it that, led him to co-found Pixar and then eventually return to Apple. And, well, you know the rest of the story.
Seriously, those stories are crazy. And the point the script makes is that these aren't just feel-good stories. They're real proof that rejection, even what seems like a huge setback, can actually point you in a better direction. Sometimes it feels like those so-called failures were actually essential stepping stones,
Yeah.
like they wouldn't have achieved those amazing things without going through those challenges first. And there's this one part in the script that really brings this home. It's where the podcast host shares their own experience pitching a project to investors.
Oh, yeah. The story about the 19 rejections. That one's a classic.
It really is. So they pitched this idea to 20 investors, and they got 19 no's. 19! But then finally, that 20th investor said yes, and it totally changed everything for them.
It's a great reminder that sometimes it just takes that one yes to make all the difference. And it shows you that a no doesn't necessarily mean your idea is bad or you're not good enough. It could be timing, it could be the wrong fit, it could be a million things.
It's so true. Now, I want to ask you, our listeners, think back on your own lives for a minute. Have you ever had something like that happen, where you got a no or even a bunch of no's, and it turned out to lead you to something amazing that you wouldn't have found otherwise?
It's something to think about for sure. We tend to focus on that immediate sting of rejection, but what if that no was actually pushing us towards something better, something more aligned with who we are and what we want to achieve?
Like those no's were actually setting us up for something even better down the line.
Mm.
And this is where the script gets really practical. They give us 4 actionable strategies to turn rejection from a roadblock into a stepping stone. Are you ready to dive into those?
Let's do it. I'm all ears. Okay, so strategy number 1, they call it reframe as redirection. It's all about shifting your perspective, seeing those no's not as like a stop sign, but more like a detour, maybe pointing you to a different path, maybe even a better one.
So like instead of seeing that rejection as the end of the road, We should be looking for those alternate routes, right? Maybe even a more scenic route, who knows?
Exactly. Sometimes that rejection is not saying that you're headed in the wrong direction completely. It's just saying that particular path might not be the right fit at this moment.
Right. Like, the script gives this great example. Imagine you get rejected for a job. Obviously, that's disappointing. But then later on, you find out that the company had a horrible work culture, like super toxic.
Hmm.
And you realize that that rejection might have actually saved you a lot of grief.
Totally. It just shows how sometimes we don't have the full picture when we get that rejection. Sometimes what feels like a bad thing at the time might actually be protecting us from something worse or, guiding us towards something better, something more suited to us.
Right. Like, it's like the universe is saying, hey, not this way, but check out this other awesome opportunity over here. We just got to keep our eyes open.
And keep our minds open too, be curious about those other possibilities that might come out of that rejection. Ask yourself, what other doors might open now?
Okay, I'm ready for strategy number 2. Hit me.
Number 2 is feedback identity. This one's all about protecting your self-worth. It basically means don't let those critiques define you. See rejection as information, data, not as a judgment on who you are as a person.
It's so easy to internalize that stuff, though, right? Especially when you've poured your heart and soul into something. But I guess this strategy is reminding us to kind of take a step back from those emotions and really look at it objectively.
Absolutely. And think about it this way. Every no is a chance to learn something, right? It's feedback that can help you get better, refine your skills, and ultimately increase your chances of success next time.
So instead of beating ourselves up and asking what's wrong with me, we should be asking, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I improve?
You got it. Shift from that emotional response to something more analytical. Take your ego out of the equation.
Makes sense. All right, strategy number 3, embrace micro-resilience. What's that all about?
This one's interesting. It's about building up your resilience, but doing it through small, intentional risks. Basically, you're desensitizing yourself to rejection by exposing yourself to it, but in small, manageable doses.
So like you're intentionally putting yourself in situations where you might get rejected,
Yeah.
just to kind of get used to the feeling.
Exactly. Think of it like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just go out and run 26 miles on your first day, right? You'd start with shorter runs, gradually increasing the distance to build up your endurance. This is kind of the same idea, but for rejection.
So what are some examples of these micro-rejections?
Oh, it could be anything, really. Anything that pushes you a little bit outside your comfort zone and has that possibility of a no, pitching an idea to your coworkers, submitting your writing to a magazine, asking someone out on a date. It's all about practicing that resilience muscle.
I like that. It's like you're dipping your toes in the pool of rejection, getting used to the temperature before you jump all the way in.
That's a great way to put it. And with each no, you get a little bit tougher, a little bit more resilient.
Until eventually those no's don't feel so scary anymore.
Exactly. They just become part of the process.
Okay, I'm ready for the final strategy, number 4. Bring it on.
This one's called celebrate effort. This is about shifting your focus away from the outcome and instead celebrating the effort you put in, regardless of whether you got a yes or a no.
So even if you don't achieve this specific goal, you still acknowledge the hard work and dedication that went into it,
Right.
and maybe the lessons you learned along the way.
That's it. It's about recognizing that the journey itself is valuable, regardless of the destination.
So instead of dwelling on what we didn't get, we celebrate the fact that we tried, we put ourselves out there, and we learned something in the process.
Exactly. It's a really empowering mindset shift.
So to recap, we have reframe as redirection, feedback identity, embrace micro-resilience, and celebrate effort. Those are our 4 strategies for turning rejection into a superpower. What do you think?
It's a pretty powerful toolkit for sure. By incorporating these strategies into your life, you can really change your mindset and actually start using rejection to your advantage.
I'm feeling way more equipped to deal with those no's already.
That's great to hear. But we're not done yet. The script actually goes even deeper, connecting these strategies to a bigger framework for success. Want to explore that a little more?
I'm totally in. Let's see how all these pieces fit together.
So the script really emphasizes that these 4 strategies, they're not just random tips, they actually work together. Like they create a whole system for turning rejection into something that propels you forward.
Okay, so how does that work? How do these strategies combine to make that system?
It's all about creating this mindset and these habits that help you not just deal with rejection, but actually learn from it and use it to your advantage.
I like that. So let's go back to those strategies and break it down a little more.
Okay, so first you have reframe as redirection. That one's all about encouraging you to see those no's as opportunities, not as the end of the line. Like maybe there's a different path out there that's even better for you.
Right, so we're not getting discouraged. We're looking for those open doors and windows.
Exactly. Then you've got feedback identity. That one reminds you not to take things personally, to see those rejections as data points, not attacks on your character.
Yeah, it's like take the emotion out of it and just see it as information you can use to improve.
Right. And then we have embrace micro-resilience. That's where you start building up that resilience muscle by putting yourself out there in small ways, getting used to hearing no without it being a huge deal.
It's like practice for the real-world rejections, right?
Mm.
We're getting stronger so we can handle the bigger stuff later.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, there's celebrate effort. That's all about focusing on the journey, on the effort you put in, not just on whether or not you got the result you wanted.
So we're celebrating the fact that we tried, that we took a chance, even if it didn't work out the way we hoped.
Exactly. And when you put all these strategies together, you create this mindset that's super resilient and adaptable. You're not scared of rejection anymore because you see it as part of the process.
It's like, you're not just dealing with rejection, you're using it as fuel. You're turning it into a positive force.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is, this is something anyone can do. You just got to be intentional about it, you know? Put those strategies into practice.
Wow, this whole deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on rejection now. I'm ready to go out there and, like, embrace those no's.
That's awesome. It's great to hear that it's resonated with you.
It really has. What about you? What part of this whole conversation has really stood out for you?
Honestly, for me, it's been the idea of reframing as redirection. It's so easy to get bogged down when things don't go our way, but if we can just shift our thinking a little bit, we might see those rejections as opportunities in disguise.
It's like, instead of focusing on the closed door, we're looking for the window that's open, right? Maybe it leads to an even better view.
I love that. So for all our listeners out there, think about how you can use these strategies to turn rejection into a superpower. How can you see those no's as detours? Use feedback to get better and celebrate the effort you put in every step of the way.
And remember, if failure is just a detour, imagine all the amazing things that might be waiting for you on that new path. What incredible discoveries and opportunities might be just around the corner?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into turning rejection into a superpower. We hope you learned some new strategies and feel empowered to embrace those no's as opportunities for growth.
Remember, every rejection is a chance to learn, adapt, and come back even stronger.
And until next time, keep pushing forward, keep learning, and never be afraid to try new things.
You got this.